Welcome, everyone. So glad to have you all join us today for our virtual Groundbreak 2021. My name is Sasha Reed. I'm the Director of Industry Advancement at Procore. And in my role, I lead and support the Procore.org team, focused primarily on advancing the construction industry through education, technology, and advocacy initiatives. And I'm truly thrilled today to facilitate this very important conversation on how construction as an industry can advance and up-level recruiting practices, really to find and retain top talent. And it's my distinct pleasure to introduce you to our panelists who are really at the forefront of evolving the recruiting practices at their firms. First is Hannah Haygood, who is campus recruiter and HR generalist for Hoar Construction. And next we have Matthew Caswell, who is employer branding and college recruiting at Skanska. Rather than having me read the bio, I actually would love them to introduce themselves to you. So Hannah, let's go ahead and have you introduce yourself. Awesome, I love that. Thank you so much, Hannah. Matthew, would you go ahead and introduce yourself next?
Yeah, of course. So I'm Matthew Caswell from Skanska, based out of our Los Angeles office. I've been with Skanska for about 2 years. Prior to Skanska, I worked for a recruiting agency where I was also in the industry. So in total, about 5 years of being in the architecture, engineering, construction industry.
Thank you so much. Yeah. I think we now have a good idea here of the passion that is being brought to this panel today. So thank you so much for those introductions. To kick off our discussion today, I wanted to really kind of look at and create some context around the conversation. The labor shortage is not a topic that's new for industry, and the fight for top talent really isn't considered breaking news anymore. Rather, this has become a reality that many of you grapple with as an ongoing motion within your business. However, similar to what Matthew was just speaking to, coming out of 2020, a finer point was really put on this topic than we've seen in years past. And I think it's worth pausing to recalculate the challenge that's truly at hand, especially in these two individuals' hands. So in March of this past year, the Associated Builders and Contractors published a news release that stated that the construction industry lost 1 million workers during the shutdown at the start of the COVID-19 pandemic. This is before the construction industry was classified as essential, and has yet to win back a fifth of those workers who were left or who left the industry or were laid off during that period. And we will need to hire an additional 430,000 craft professionals in 2021 to meet that demand. So I think it's worth letting those numbers sink in for a moment. Just thinking about that, because that will be the compelling, I think we started calling it a talent crisis. And now what we're seeing is a real all-out war for talent. So in light of those current numbers, we at Procore really asked ourselves, how could we help you think differently about recruitment, and what do best practices really look like in 2021? So this assembled panel you have here of these two experts really are here to share their insights into not only how their recruitment practices are evolving, but really to discuss what they're doing to also retain top talent as well. So let's go ahead and get started and dig into the conversation. Hannah, I actually want to start with you. I'd love to know, what are your biggest challenges that you're seeing around recruiting, and how are you overcoming them?
Yes, so this is a big question that's, been something we're all dealing with. And as we all know, great candidates are often dealing with multiple offers at once from a lot of different great companies. And so one way we try to do is give them the customer experience on what it's truly going to be like on a day for them in the life of working at Hoar Construction. And so that's meeting with the actual team that they're going to be working with, or show them some of the responsibilities that they're going to have, and kind of have that open conversation to kind of show them what it's really like to work here. And so I think that's a huge thing for candidates that I've heard, is that they want to see how they're going to fit in at this company and what's going to make them feel at home. And so that's something really big. And also getting them to meet their hiring manager or their the potential leadership here too is one way. I think another big challenge we have is hiring hiring fast can be such a challenge. It is something we deal with day in and day out, because if you have too many people on the recruiting committee type deal trying to hire someone, getting a consensus from all these people back in a timely manner is a lot harder than it probably should be. But, when you have too many people, it's hard to gather all your thoughts together. But I think truly extreme communication with the candidates is so important, and something that we really are trying to work on and have gotten better with this virtual stuff that we're having to play on with quicker. One way we're really overcoming these challenges in the industry is trying to hire from within. So that's even finding like intern level and bringing them on full time, and that's training them up in that way. And really that's the basis of having a really good intern program, with showing them really their responsibilities and not just a coffee running intern or just pushing a broom. With that being said, we tell them all the time there's going to be some grunt work you have to do, but we want to give them the exposure that someone as a project manager, superintendent, or pre-construction manager has. And so giving them actual day-to-day responsibilities of what they would get to do. And I think that that's the most important thing. And I've heard from a lot of our interns on why they chose us over a different company is really that they got clear expectations on, hey, this is what you're going to be doing on a daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly basis in this role. And so giving them real, actual on the job experience has been something huge. And so my biggest piece is when you're building your internship program is to make sure that you're establishing those clear expectations on what they're going to be doing. And I have so many quotes from my interns, but one was Danny Maslin, who is a University of Hoar interns, actually works there full time. And so we have 79 current employees who were co-ops or interns. So that's a huge number for us. That's something that we really.
Yeah, a lot of similar ones that Hannah's talking about, right? At this point, if you're not aware that it's a war for talent, and you were either NASA, Tesla, or and even at that level, you're still battling, the war for talent. So, right, time to hire is a huge one. I want to talk about that, but in addition to that, to take it one step back, was just the construction industry itself, right? I mentioned a few of the engineering, within the engineering realm, a few of the target audiences that we target tend to go also in line with a lot of those, Teslas or the other, and back in the early ages, right? We're talking, middle school or high school for students, creating a passion for wanting to get into construction and wanting to build. So, there's certain ways that we try to go a part of something that's bigger than myself, right? Something that my friends, my family are going to have to use on a day-to-day, or sometime in their life. If there's an airport that you're working on, how cool is it to say that my company was a part of creating this airport? So what you're interacting with was put in by the hands of my company, right? So there's some core elements there of the construction industry itself having the challenge of just having interest in candidates' minds nowadays. But to bring more pressing challenges, I'd say time to hire is a huge one for us. It's a war for talent, right? So Hannah and myself are going after the same candidates, right? So what is it that I can do to try to make Skanska seem more appealing to these candidates? And Hannah talked about it, pretty well. Build a relationship with your candidate through that conversation, understand what they're looking for, and make sure that the company, for Skanska, ideally they're lining up with our core values, right? So that's a big piece for us as well. Just trying to be early and consistent. So from the moment that they see our brand or our logo, to trying to get them down our candidate funnel, right? From just attracting them, then getting them to consider to working at Skanska, getting them to apply to Skanska, getting them all throughout the onboarding phase. And then once they're with the company, how do we keep them here with retention? So there's a lot of different avenues that we're trying to get candidates from the top of the funnel all the way through and to stay with Skanska. So a few of the other ways that we get early and consistent with candidates, we have different, basically not going to a career fair just once a year, but rather looking for opportunities to engage with candidates outside the typical recruiting season. I'm sure many other companies feel this, but if you're going to just one career fair, once a year, and you're talking to candidates there, odds are the candidates that you're talking to either have job offers already or are maybe not the best talent, right? Because they've been passed up on, because most companies are now doing recruiting much earlier in the year, building relationships with those target groups on campus. Identify your target audience and start that communication early and often. And then we've seen some good success with that, and probably will continue that. And obviously, it's a moving target, so you have to check in with your audience every year, figuring out what is important to them, leveraging market research, right? Figuring out what our target audiences are looking for in a job, in a career, and then trying to advertise to that and making sure that we're coming to the plate with what that looks like.
Yeah, and I think for both of you, you have, I'll say, fairly newer careers with the companies you're currently serving on. But even with, I kind of want to look at a window of the last 3 to 5 years and really see what you've seen, how you've seen recruiting practices change in the last 3 to 5 years. And so much of this has to do with continuing to learn as we recruit and as we learn and hear from those candidates. So I'd love for you to share, in the time, really the last 3 to 5 years, what have you seen changing around recruiting practices, and what impact are you seeing that really having on hiring overall? Matthew, I want to start with you.
Yeah, so you asked for 3 to 5 years. I'll give you back to 2009 just as a point of reference, right? That was a huge time where the employer had all the power, right? And the employer had all the pull. We could be very, very selective. Fast forward to today, it's a much more candidate-driven market, right? The candidate holds much more of that power. So the burden then falls on the employer to differentiate themselves from competitors and build their value proposition so that it shows we are the best company to work for. So a few things had to change internally, right? Organizationally, our benefits program, we're switching towards a total rewards program where we encompass full benefits. Compensation's always a thing that we want to make sure that we're being most competitive with. But other things like continuing education kind of arms us to go and recruit more aggressively, and basically we're able to attract more candidates, having that operationally changed throughout the year. So I'd say most recently, that's kind of what it looks like in terms of changes, is just internally making sure that we're offering what needs to be offered and try to go above that so that we can beat out our competitors.
I mean, you speak very well here. This is very much a competitive market. Hannah, I'm curious to see from your perspective, really looking at the last 3 to 5 years, what have you seen shifting, and how is that impacting your hiring practices?
Yes. So like I said, I've been in recruiting for the past 3 years. And like you said, Sasha, that the labor shortage has been here. It's been here for way more than the past 3 years. And competitors are all hiring. We're all hiring, honestly, and wanting the same candidates. And so it's been tough. And COVID-19 has not been much easier on any of us. And so it's really hindered our ability to have that one-on-one interaction and that in-person meeting with candidates. And so it's hard to carry on, and doing this virtually, it's hard to showcase our values and culture through a laptop. And so, it's one of those where you're really trying to give them the best of you and your company, but it's hard to kind of get to know people this way. But it's been a really great ride. And one of the biggest impacts for us is our family atmosphere and culture. And so it's something we really try to hit on. And we're a company that really cares about its people, trusts its people, and wants, everyone to love working here. We work long hours in this industry. It's nothing new to anyone, that it's not just a 40-hour-a-week job. So it's something, if we're around like each other. So it's something that it's really impacts and attracts top talent that way. But it's actually another big area that they have it, but people really can feel it. And so that's important to really give people, different types of people, different groups of people, different people in different areas in our company, all getting to meet people that are coming in to interview as well. And so we try to express our values and our culture as much as we can, and really through our people and their stories, and engaging as many team members as we can. So I think at the end of the day, to retain current employees and to also hire new ones, it's, showcasing the group.
That's really what you're trying to find, is the essence of that tenacity and resilience in that individual to make sure they're a good fit. But Hannah, you just mentioned something around Teams and Hangouts, and it made me think about technology and really want to understand how is technology evolving your recruiting practices? And I think most importantly is really, where do you see it bringing the most value? Hannah, I want to start back with you again.
Yeah, so I think technology has truly, really diversified our recruiting strategies tremendously. I mean, from, our way of tracking employees and having an applicant tracking system and using job boards to engage with people. And in the college grand scheme of things, it's using Handshake and, getting plugged in with students as quickly as you can. And we were doing that when I first came, but I really think it's been vital to, recruit on social media and to post your employer brand and to really get involved on each different platform of social media, especially with these younger generations. They're all on each different platform. And so really diving in there, showing your people, showing more stories, showing blogs on, you can kind of see anywhere in the US or even internationally to source some candidates there. And so that's been a huge step for us. But also, I think just in the past 20 years, the construction industry has really shifted more left to the technology side and really trying to engage as much as we can, especially with these younger generation that's so tech savvy. So
yeah, 100%. And I think, Matthew, I'm curious to hear from your perspective, how you're seeing technology really kind of evolve the process and what impact that's having.
Yeah, right. So when you look at the technology industry weaved into recruiting, right, that's going to be different technology that's being leveraged than, your typical construction employee working, in the field. I'm not going to plug so many technology vendors into this, but a few of the things, Hannah had mentioned a couple. LinkedIn Recruiter is a next level, I guess, recruiting, next level LinkedIn, where you're able to really get down and dirty with where your candidates are from, how many years they've been in the industry, what companies have they worked for. Most people probably listening to this today has a LinkedIn. I'll tell you, most of the younger generations at the college level, they're being advised to create LinkedIn's. They have workshops to create LinkedIn's. So a lot of people are on that platform that's housed information that you need to know, right? Who's studying what, and are they good at it? So that's one. Handshake as well. Other vendors. The other thing that Hannah had mentioned, the applicant tracking systems. That's huge, right? Having something that can help your company really get people through the candidate funnel that I had mentioned earlier, from attracting them to working them through the onboarding process, right? That all needs to be seamless. It needs to be consistent. And when you have multiple, systems that are kind of trying to pass a candidate from this system off to this system, off to this system, things can get a little clunky, and the candidate experience tends to get degraded a little bit. So trying to come to, one seamless system is usually the goal. Let's see what else. In terms of technology as well, during COVID times, we were, our marketing team captures a lot of our projects using 360 video and photography. So that was a kind of a no-brainer for us. It was like, hey, we already have, these projects captured in 360. We used to do in-person project tours with candidates where they were able to ask questions about our projects. We're able to interact with them. Can't do that with COVID. So what can we do? We have virtual recordings of all of these. Let's do the same thing. Let's hop on a Zoom. Let's have one of our project managers walk through this project, controlling the screen. At one point, we started handing out Google Cardboards and uploaded a few of our projects to YouTube so that students could put their phones in the Google Cardboard and then be first person in, one of our projects, looking around, able to look at something and say, wow, why do you guys have that, pipe coming out of that wall? Doesn't that interfere with this or that? Allowing to ask those authentic questions that you would have gotten in person is another example. And then more on the operation side, of course we use Procore and, all the other latest, technologies when it comes to construction. Something that Skanska has done to talk to, technology in the workforce. Skanska's one of our main initiatives is sustainable building. There's a quote somewhere that I can't remember exactly what it is, but it's somewhere around, we've gotten really good as an industry at reducing the carbon emissions when it comes to the operating of the building. We have efficient plugs, we have efficient lights, we have efficient toilets. What we still haven't reduced carbon emissions at is the construction of the buildings themselves. So, are we trucking things from across the country using diesel trucks and, the heavy equipment that we're operating, all that stuff. We're still, I think it's at 70% of carbon emissions, when it comes to construction. 70% is the construction of buildings, 30% is the operation of buildings. So something that Skanska did to try to battle that partnered with several other, technology companies and other general contractors is called our EC3 tool, which you're able to plug in all of your quantities, figure out what material you're using. You can type all that stuff in for this project before you build it. And then it will pump out a number of saying, this building is going to be this percent energy efficient, or this amount of carbon emissions are going to come from this project. So now you're armed with information, right? We can now work on getting that number down. If we swap out this material for this material, how will that impact the carbon emissions total count? So that's stuff that you can all present to your quick win. It's kind of like low-hanging fruit. Good people, good employees, good, project managers, good project engineers tend to know other good project engineers and other construction workers. So leverage a company referral program, right? If there's incentives to give to your employees for referring their friends into the company, if you don't already have one, I would look into that. So basically not trying to reinvent the wheel, but, there's quality talent sitting in our backyard that we should need to call upon and ask, hey, who do you know? And then also, not trying to, if there's a position open, maybe there's somebody within your company that might be a good fit for that, because that person might be looking for a change. So allowing, which I think, Sasha, you had mentioned this to me weeks ago, but it's a jungle gym theory. And I think you had told me that was from somebody, so I'm stealing it with pride here, but it's a jungle gym theory, right? So a candidate or an employee doesn't want to just stay in their same role and have that linear career path. Some do, but more popularly, it seems individuals want to move side to side. So if they don't have the ability to hop over to that next rung next to them, then odds are they're going to be looking outside the company to make that hop. So that's what I'd say. Some of the couple of best practices that we've seen throughout the years.
Yeah, I love that idea. I totally did borrow it. It was discussed internally, even for us at Procore, as we're looking at the similar challenges of recruitment and development. This idea of shifting the model in the mind of your workers or employees as a ladder to a jungle gym, to really give them the ability to move across the organization to develop their skills. Hannah, I'd really love to hear from you as you're talking through some of the things that you're doing, leveraging technology to really change the recruiting process. What are some of the best practices you've doubled down on to find that top talent?
Yes, and I love that jungle gym analogy. That was so good. We all want to hire the right people, the best people that really align with our company values and our culture. And so really the way that we've done this is, trying to align the people, the best fit with other people that we think that they'll fit with in the organization as well. And, it's funny because earlier this summer, I got a call from one of our superintendents that was talking about his intern he had just gotten. It was his first day and he was in the field and he picked up a broom without being asked, without being told any instructions, and just started cleaning up the site. And the superintendent was like amazed by this and called me and was like, he's a rock star. And so, we all want to hire the person that picks up the broom, that isn't afraid to ask the questions and is so eager to learn and wants to be better. And we all want that, but the way to get that and to attract that top talent is to really be open about the company and about its core values and about what the responsibilities they would be doing day in and day out. And so that's something that's really been great for us. And with that, I mean, all of our interns and people we've heard, there are so many great companies that you can go to work for. And so really making sure that you show that in your recruitment and showing that to these interns and saying like, hey, this is how it is when you come work here, showing people, showing their stories, kind of diving in a little more than just the surface level of your employees. They decided not to go with a certain company, based on if someone showed, just a normal job site walk or just a scripted sit down with this person, then you're going to meet with this person type deal that doesn't feel as homey, has been some of our feedback we've received from some of our interns saying that that's the reason they came to work with us, is because it was just a casual, clear conversation that said like, hey, like this is what you're going to be doing. Here's your responsibilities, and pretty concise and not necessarily as showy. I think that that's something like this next generation isn't necessarily falling for the marketing ploys and all of that as well, but really just showing your people and really diving into, hey, it's important for the family atmosphere, it's important for the company culture, and wanting to show that to your candidates, I think is really, really big. And we've really tried to double down on all that.
Yeah, and I think I'm hearing some common themes emerging from what you're sharing with us around, highlighting your people, really truly putting your people at the center of the storytelling of who you are as a company. Understanding it's about building relationships, being able to look at the practices in your business, your benefits, things of this nature that may need to shift in order to not just attract that next generation of hires, but also retain them. And then really coming back to how technology is helping you to tie all that together into a cohesive package. So as we look at, I love to have just a good solid takeaway for our audience to take from the conversation. So for those who are looking to really level up their recruitment practices, what one piece of advice would you give them? And Matthew, I'm actually going to start with you.
All right. Yeah. I would take a look, if you don't have one already, basically figuring out a university recruiting strategy. So take a look at who your target universities are, or, if they're community colleges or trade schools, identify, what schools you want to attend, identify a recruiting team for those schools. And then start reaching out to them, right? Go on Google, type in, XYZ school, figure out who the dean of engineering is, or figure out a faculty member who's in that school, and build a relationship with them. Ask them, how can we basically be a good partner to you? And hopefully the product of that is you're now recruiting some of the best talent. So building a relationship early and staying consistent with those target audiences.
And Hannah, I'd love to get your take on one takeaway for someone who's looking to really level up their recruitment practice. What one piece of advice would you give them?
For sure. And easy, like I've said this whole time. I mean, if you don't have an internship program, I would highly suggest starting one. And like Matthew said, I mean, getting involved in those universities, doing all that. Like I've said, this entire spill is to really be you, show your people. That's kind of what people want to see, is really what it's actually like to work here day in the life. And so be genuine, be honest, and have a little fun with it. It's a fun industry to be a part of, and it's hard, but it can be fun too. So really showcasing all that.
I love that. Takeaways. It's a fun industry, and don't be afraid to pick up a broom.
Yes. Don't be afraid to pick up the broom.
Well, thank you so much, both you, Hannah and Matthew. Thank you so much for joining us today. Obviously, you are the ones in the trenches of this war. So all of your expertise that you're bringing, thank you so much for the insights. And thank you all for joining us today. We hope that in this conversation, you've really had a chance to find some tangible next steps, or maybe even first steps to up-leveling your recruitment practices. So we appreciate you sitting in and joining us today.